Hello, this is Ben Summers from Morris Hillman Productions. I'm currently filming in a back lane in Enmore, and the reason for that is to do with the house which is in front of the camera. It belonged to Elizabeth Ryby, who was one of Mary Ryby's daughters. Mary Ryby, if you don't know who she is or was, is the little old lady in the bonnet on the $20 note. The picture of her on the current $20 note actually doesn't really resemble her, and this does annoy me a little bit because it's just not historically accurate. Anyway, the house you see before you was built for her daughter Elizabeth Ryby. It was built between 1847 and 1855, I believe. Mary Ryby is a very interesting character. She lived she had the typical rags. She had the archetypal rags to riches story. She was born in England in 1777, and she was transported out here to the then colony of New South Wales, which at the time took up the entire east coast. In 1790, at the age of 13, she was obviously charged with theft and was thus a convict. When she was an adult, she married Thomas Ryby, who had an import-export business. And when he died in 1811, she took over. And she was familiar with the ins and outs of the business because in the years before, when Thomas Ryby had been away, she'd actually stood in for him as managing the business. Ryby the elder, so Mary Ryby, died in 1855, at the age of 78, which is a pretty long life to have lived for someone in the Victorian era. Certainly, living to 78 years old was probably not very common because you know poor health and hygiene meant that life expectancy was naturally reduced as a result. Elizabeth Ryby only lived here for 9 years, from 1855 to 1864, when the house was sold to James Pemmell. James Pemmell was a baker, and his bakery the facade of his bakery in the city actually still stands, and you can go and visit it. It's not far from George Street. It's very close to Christchurch St Lawrence, which is another historic building that might be the subject of its own video in the future. Pemmell and his family owned the building until I think about 1900. Pemmell and his family owned the old Ryby home just here until about 1901, and then it was sold to become shops, and then later apartments in the 1930s, and it still is apartments today. As you can see, the building is in externally poor condition, though it remains a remarkable survivor from that time, and is a really interesting link to a pioneering businesswoman who I feel has a really interesting story to tell. Mary Ryby was definitely a trailblazer in her time. Anyway, that's the end of the video, and I'll see you in the next one, folks. Alright, bye for now. Hello and welcome to this video. My name's Ben Summers. I run the channel Morris Hillman Productions, and I thought I'd make a brief video about the history of this building in Petersham on Parramatta Road. This is the Lewisham Arcade. now, which was built in 1886. Now, from the use of the word arcade, you'd be forgiven for thinking that this was a shopping arcade, since arcade is commonly used to refer to, is commonly used in the retail industry. However, this was actually a skating rink, which I didn't know about until a few years ago. So yeah, I thought it was a shopping arcade as well until I was corrected. Yeah, it was built in 1886 and as a skating rink, an ice skating rink, because skating was popular back then as it is today. As you can see, it's looking a little bit worse for wear on one side, and it's now home to retail businesses, ironically. So I suppose you could say that it's living up to its name as an arcade. Alright folks, that's it for this brief video. I do have another one in the Sydney History Snapshot series coming up about Central Station. It is going to come out hopefully soon. I'm just waiting on copyright permission to use one of the images of from the relevant organisation. So yeah, stay tuned. Please be patient and stay tuned to the channel for when that video is uploaded. All right, thanks folks. I'll see you on the next one. Okay, bye. Hello, this is Ben Summers from Morris Hillman Productions. Today I'm filming the Broadway, the former Grace Brothers department store on Broadway in Ultimo. An interesting fact about this store is that it's actually split between two suburbs, so Glebe and Ultimo. The building nearest the camera is in Glebe, whereas the building which is furthest from the camera is in Ultimo. This store was built in 1906, and I believe it was the first CBD store which Grace Brothers owned. It was in operation until 1992, which was only 32 years ago. So it's, you know, it was in operation. So it was owned and operated by Grace Brothers for 86 years. My mother actually remembers going into this store when she was younger, and she described it to me as being a real hodgepodge of things. You know, there was different things which weren't in the regular Grace Brothers stores at the time, and so it's interesting to have to know someone who remembers going in there. And so yeah, that's the history of the building. Another interesting fact about it relates to the two glass domes up the top. They're actually part of the lift system. I'm not sure how common that is. It is to have glass domes as part of lift systems, but I still think it's pretty cool regardless, and I thought it just might be an interesting little factoid that my subscribers might like to know about. Grace Brothers was an extensive business concern. You know, obviously they had the stores in. They had the store in Pitt Street, and then as well as other stores in like Parramatta and various other places around New South Wales, and possibly even Australia as well. So yeah, that concludes today's brief history of Grace Brothers. All right, thank you very much for viewing, and please subscribe. It really helps. Yeah, thank you. Okay, bye.